Welcome back to Hacker Hangouts on Saturday morning. We're jumping into ChatGPT. And what's interesting about this is the first time I saw ChatGPT, I'm like, this is dumb. I'm never going to use this. And as time has gone on, I'm like, oh, it has replaced Stack Overflow in Google and hours of research about any number of things. And it just like, you know what? I don't have it with me because I have had 3 cups of coffee. But just like my Bluetooth coffee mug, which is the dumbest thing I have ever owned, I now cannot live without it. And it's kind of, it's awkward to say the least. I don't know. Have you guys been using ChatGPT in the same way?
Well, I asked ChatGPT what I should say, what the first thing is I should say about ChatGPT on Hacker Hangouts. And it says, you can start by introducing ChatGPT as an AI language model developed by OpenAI and highlight its ability to generate human-like text based on the input it receives. Mention its significance in the field of AI and potential applications of such technology. They definitely didn't program it to say that, right?
Oh yeah. Well, here's the funny thing is, like, I've been using it for silly things. The title for this stream was made by ChatGPT. I gave it like an idea of what we were going to talk about, and it wrote it. And then because I wanted to be remarkably lazy, I was like, you know what? How about I have it write the description for the video too? And I gave it an idea of what we were going to talk about, and it wrote the entire YouTube description. Like, I found it gets about like 90% of the 80% of the way there, and then you have to do some prompt engineering to make it go the rest of the way. But even like things like I spun up my personal site again, I rewrote the thing, and I added like AI summaries to blog posts. Like, no one looks at my site. I don't expect anyone to ever go to my site. So like, it's just funny. I'm like, I don't know, I'll have it prompt and do TLDRs on it, and it's been super like. I found it being helpful for that, for descriptions, and then like little things like, okay, I need to make a title for this. I need to organize this data. I mean, probably the most incredible use I've put it towards was I'm getting a nose job, by the way. Actually, that's what I keep telling everyone. It's a nose job. It's like, I have never been able to breathe out of my nose my entire life. And I'm finally like going to do something about it. So you go in, you get the CT scan, you get all this crap done, and you're like, they give you, here is the list of all the crap you're going to get done to your nose. And it's all completely in a different language as far as I'm concerned. It's like something adeptomy, endoscribnomic, blah, 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 like all gibberish. So I'm like, I don't know, I'll just copy, paste this, throw it in there, gave it the gobbledygook, said, give it to me in plain English. And I got a full description of all the surgery in plain English, better than the doctor could give it, which was just like, we're living in a brand new age.
It's definitely good for like the explain like I'm 5 type stuff. I've been able to ask it for the dumb version of everything, and it's been pretty good. It's also good for sock puppets. I found that like writing LinkedIn blog posts on any topic, I can get LinkedIn level intellectualism with ChatGPT.
How do I insult everyone on LinkedIn
with no edits?
So now we have AI to generate content. Now we need an AI to consume that content, and we all can just sit back and let the internet be what it's always been, which is a cesspool of garbage, reinforcing itself. No. So I'm usually the Luddite in the group that is just like, not everything has to be high tech, and I fucking love ChatGPT. Oh my God. Like at first I was like, whatever. And then I started playing with it, and I was using it to give me like lyric ideas for songs, like ideas I already had, but like give me some limericks here and there. So just to kind of spark creativity and stuff like that. But the past couple of weeks is the first time I've sat down and used it as what I'm going to coin as a cognitive assistance device, which is, I find myself in work and just in general, whenever I am transitioning from task to task, going to the new thing is really hard. So if like on one side I'm writing a REST API, and on the other side I'm writing some C for some backend, and like I'm interacting with a kernel driver or whatever, and I'm going back and forth, you're context switching between like 2 to 3 languages and a couple different frameworks. It's hard to recall like, oh, how do I do this thing? I don't know. like it's perfect recall. I can just do ChatGPT. Like, how do I use Fast API to create sub applications, and it'll spit out a little like tutorial example of what to do, and then I go, oh, cool, and then I cobble it together in the way that I need it to be, but I'm not like using the raw code that it spits out. And like
Yeah.
99% of the time when it spits out code, it's just kind of like, also don't use this because it's probably insecure, which is really funny.
It kind of has the same weird issue that like Stack Overflow does, or at least for I'm finding it for some of the stuff I'm doing, because it's still old. We'll say, look, let's use an example like Firebase. I've been messing around with Firebase. It's what my site's built on. Like building your own CMS is a terrible idea. But Firebase had version 8 and version 9, and they did destructuring on a bunch of their libraries and blah, blah, blah. But like, it's even if you tell it, give me a example of Firebase version 9, it's using version 8. And you're fine then on Stack Overflow because version 9 was recently released. But for like concepts or like menial tasks, holy crow, it saved me a bunch of time because I'm doing TypeScript and I want very, very strict types. So I can legitimately drop an object in it and say, give me a type definition for this, give me the interface for this, and it will give me a pretty good type for it. So I'm finding more and more reasons just to drop stuff into it. I do always have to be cognizant of, we'll say, privacy for it, is I don't want to put private data in it or code. There's been already instances where it's been like, what was it? Apple or Amazon was throwing stuff in there, and that stuff started getting spit out as examples to other people. And that's definitely concerning. I am looking forward to see if the plus version has some sort of privacy built in or privacy switch you can turn on. But it's just, it's amazing how much I feel like I'm starting to use it in just daily tasks. And I'll be interested to see. I think like something so curious about it is how people have come up with ways of using it. And I find that like as the model is going to start getting modified, there's so many ramifications. And I guess that's kind of a good place. Let's start, which is, how is this going to change? Let's keep it specific for our industry, not like how is it going to change the world, but how do you think it's going to fundamentally change? The title of our stream is like, are we going to be replaced by the evil AI robot? So maybe let's start there. Do you think this is going to replace our jobs? Like in cybersecurity in general?
I mean, cybersecurity in general, software engineering in general, hard no. And I mean, if anyone thinks that you're just going to get replaced full stop, they're fooling themselves, because anyone who puts like any of this code that's generated by ChatGPT directly into production is going to get instantly fired.
Oh,
I think what was the intro line we were going to use? Like, I use ChatGPT for production software, and now I'm jobless and unhireable. Like, it's, if you want to end up with really bad code with lots of bugs, by all means, let's throw everything into ChatGPT.
Gary, what do you think?
Like I said, I don't think it's. So I was having this discussion. I forget who I was talking to about this. Maybe it was you guys, but I don't think it's going to be useful as a general solutions production interface, and in the sense that you could just take code from it and it'll quote just work for what you want. And this is why I said it's a cognitive assistance device, right? It's as if your brain had perfect recall, right? Because previously on Hacker Hangouts. So previously, like if you wanted to know how to use some new framework, you'd have to go read the documentation, which is written by a human, which like there's all kinds of ambiguities. It's a pain in the butt. Digging out the tutorial for exactly what you're trying to do is like searching Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow has its own recommendation engine in terms of like what it shows to you when you do search. And this is why I think it's going to be largely a replacement tool for stuff like Google, because I haven't, the only time I have to go to Stack Overflow now for the most part is when I'm dealing with like cutting edge stuff that hasn't made its way into the model, which is totally legit. And for that stuff, I'm like going to go read the source code to the kernel or the driver or whatever anyway. I'm just going to go look at what people are doing because it's under active development. But once these frameworks get big enough that they have manuals written for them already, it's just like having an AI that explains to you how to use something in an explain like I'm five manner, like Loop said, it's a cognitive assistance device. It is a way to rapidly learn how to use new things that are not difficult to learn, right? And by that I mean it's not going to teach you to play a guitar. It can like sort of teach you, but it can't see your hands. It can't tell you what's correct. It can't tell you what sounds good. And in that sense, it can't tell you whether your program is good or not, right?
It can't
like that.
I'll say though, it can be used to say what is the most effective way to learn guitar. What has most people found successful?
And you know what the answer to that? I actually asked this question. I asked this question, what's the most effective way to learn a language? And it spits out by working with a bunch of people who already know the language and immersing yourself in the language and sticking with it for many, many years. It's like I could have regurgitated that, right? Like, it's not...
but for me, like, again, I'll use the example of like, sure, language, we've heard that one, but like, there's so many other pieces to that. Like, what's the best way to learn this language? What's the best way? Like, I found, so here's the fundamental problem, I believe, with things like Google. So you go to Google, and Google, I think, is going to radically change from this. They're even talking about what their model releases in 3 days. Didn't they say they release? I think Google's releasing their model on February 7th.
If I remember correctly, Microsoft has already integrated ChatGPT with Teams.
Yeah, we'll get to that one. It's actually, I think, really cool. I'm a little worried, again, about privacy and things like that with it. But fundamental problem with Google is when you have this general concept of what you want to do, you have to start with, let's say like I want to do something weirdly advanced with Next.js. I have to say, like, throwing out an example, you know what? Something I was working on. I want to do summarization of these podcasts, and I want to have it create a summary of it, which A, we can put into the description, and B, maybe I'll make a blog post. So like, idea of I want to bring podcast to blog post. So at Google, I have to first say, like, how can I do a summarization with AI? So I then get that. And then I go to, OpenAI has DaVinci. I go, great. So how do I interact with DaVinci programmatically? And then I have to search for that. And I'm constantly going back to the search bar, typing in something new, going back. But every single time I go to the search bar, I now have to reteach it all the context. And I have to first say, how do I summarize a blog post with DaVinci using Node, with summarization of subsections, with video for audio, and this whole context gets longer and longer, where I think ChatGPT fundamentally is a better way to search, because I can now say, how do I do summarization? How do I do that with Node? And it has full awareness of the context beforehand, and I can just build on my question. Google is going to adopt this. Like, if they haven't already internally, it is such a better way, and it's a more pleasurable way to search. I want to get back to some comments in code or in chat, but before I do, what do you guys think about that? Like, is this a better way of searching for data?
I think it's not a better way of searching for data. I think Google's, sort of special sauce will always be its ability to index and search better. You're not searching for data with ChatGPT, though. You're searching for information. You're searching for answers. And ChatGPT, I think, is the superior way to do that. Google will still be the, I think, the leading, data surfacing application for a while. But if you're looking for answers, it's ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm. Gary?
I think undoubtedly ChatGPT is, or not, maybe not ChatGPT itself, but something like it. Like Google might, I don't know if they're going to integrate ChatGPT directly or if they're going to do their own thing, but something like it undoubtedly will completely change the way we search the internet. Because it's not like the problem usually with search, and the problem with these AI, chatbots in general is, and this is why it won't replace software developers and it won't replace a whole bunch of other people, but you have to know what to put in to get what you actually want out, right? And the difference between Google and ChatGPT is ChatGPT can do some amount of inference to try and figure out what you actually meant, right? The old school thought of Google foo, if you will, of how to search the internet effectively is to know that you don't want to put, written English language into the chat box. You want to put what you're expecting to find on the page into the box, right? And so sometimes you have to use words that are similar to the thing that you're using because the person who wrote it originally might have used a slightly different word that was a synonym or whatever. So you would have to, you'd have to do a little bit of language finding in that sense to figure out or find information. ChatGPT can kind of infer what you're basically looking for and give you an answer. And if it's wrong, you can say like, no, I meant this. And it will just revert, it will just change its answer because you clarified a little bit, and you can start speaking to it in natural language. This will change the way search happens across the internet for sure, without a doubt. Whether that's good, I don't know.
Well, I think one other thing to keep in mind. Oh, sorry. Was to say, how much information does ChatGPT have at its fingertips right now? Everything up until what, the year 2021 or so?
I believe it was trained, or I
limited knowledge of the world and events after 2021. I'm looking at the exact note.
Yeah, so like it doesn't have recent information available to it. And that is where
world and events is how it specifies it. So it has some recent information, because like if you ask it about ChatGPT, it has that information, but it keeps world and events. And it's weird because I think their fear with this, and I shouldn't say it's weird, it makes sense. They don't want someone to be able to go in and create massive amount, because you now can create articles and you'd say like, give me an article about a dystopian future where such and such happens, and it's close enough to the truth, and you could make tons of fake news, we'll call it. You make falsified news, and you spread that across the internet rapidly. That's what they kind of want to... because the truth is we don't know the attacks that this could be leveraged for. We have lots of guesses. We know some of them, but like they're kind of like guessing for the future of like what attacks could be used. I want to circle back because I realized I never answered the question. You guys did. Of could this replace my job, or could this replace, like, we'll say like I'll go a step back, which is like pen testing and things like that. And it's weird. I actually think I'm going to say yes and no. It gets me excited because I talk to my father, I talk to other people, and everyone has said like the same, I think, utterly ridiculous thing, which is AI, it's going to take our jobs. In this, I get thrilled about it because I see so many opportunities for it to remove the crap off my plate. So example, like some fundamental piece of my business I have like built my business on is anytime you can pull a repeatable task, anytime there's like the stuff that you don't want to do or you're not good at, like example, like policy writing and things like that. It's the same policies. It doesn't get me off. I don't get excited about policy writing. Other people do. So I push that to them. Payroll and stuff like that doesn't get me excited. I push that off. There's going to be chunks of my job and chunks of pen testing, the stuff which is like the boring stuff. Like, don't do a full-blown pen test if you haven't done a Qualys or a Nessus or a vulnerability scan. Like, there's no point doing a pen test. Go run that first. And I think there's going to be fundamental things that we can push off to, we'll say, the robot overlords to have them do it. And then you get to focus on what you do best. I think the other piece of this is something Gowrie said is you have, we'll say, a robot with perfect context and knowledge. And when I was doing pen testing on, something with 300,000 endpoints, you'd find credentials here, you'd find credentials here, you'd find a little credential here, you'd find a vulnerability here. And most like past domain admin are not just, I found domain, sometimes they are, I found domain admin, I log in. It's, I found a piece here, piece here, piece here, piece here. And if I string those things together, I now have a path. And I have something with perfect knowledge I can feed this data to and help it will help me make those connections.
Perfect, or I'm not going to say perfect, better
Yep.
recall. It's not
Better
perfect
recall.
knowledge. It's not even knowledge, right? Because it can have imperfect knowledge. It has better recall than a human because it just has more data, period. Right? And so is it coming for our jobs? No, I don't think it's coming for our jobs. Like I said, I think for our jobs, something like this becomes a cognitive assistance device. The jobs I think it comes for are people like translators, right? Where instead of paying someone, like if you want to translate Japanese to English in a way that's reliable and looks like a reasonable, sentence. And I mean not like katakana, I mean like hiragana or kanji or something like that, where there's like the letters and the characters and all those things. It's expensive to have something translated raw from one to another, even though, if you can plug it into Google, but we all know the game of like, how many times can I translate this back and forth before it becomes garbage type game. I haven't tried it with ChatGPT, but I'll bet you ChatGPT is a lot more accurate in producing natural language from one language to another. And that destroys the job of a high-paid translator, right? And to the extent that you can still train to do that, but you don't need perfect knowledge. You just need someone to sit in front of it and say like, "Hey, this sentence doesn't quite make sense. Can you try that again?" Right? And so you're having someone review it, and that is going to drive the wages of those jobs down. I don't know what job replaces that.
Well,
right?
I'll counter that. I think it becomes more specialized in a cool way. Because again, think about all the translation jobs that we take for that we A, can't do, or B, have to be done. Like, let's use this as an example. I make the perfect YouTube video talking about something awesome. And it's magical. It's everything the hacker community has been waiting for. I don't know. Like it's something awesome. I want to translate it to different languages. I have a couple options. I have on mass scale, there's not really an option. YouTube moves into captions. YouTube's captions are okay. They're not great. And then it translates those captions over to something else. On top of that, the number of words in English might be different than the number of words in another language for specification and all of that, which means it doesn't line up with the vocals I'm saying, and now it's delayed and it's off sync and things like that. You can now do this with OpenAI Whisper, open source. You can run it on your own computer, which takes audio to text. I can have that translated, and then I can have AI line that back up with the tracks. Live Overflow just talked about this and that he wants to do it with all of his videos. And someone in the chat, he messaged out to Twitter, he goes, "It would be so cool if someone did this." And within the first 3 replies, someone dropped an open source project where someone already has done the entire thing with an automated script.
Right. And so this is why I said, I don't think it's coming for our job, because I think we're going to find ways to do all of these things. Right. What I'm saying is that there are a large number of cognitive-based jobs like translators who take things manually or use tool like whatever and do that right now, and their jobs are just undercut entirely by something like this. And it's not easy to take someone who's already trained in a specialty like that and be like, okay, you're a programmer now. That's not how it works, right? So that's what I'm talking about. Like, I think there will open up a brand new market for new jobs and new types of work and new types of things like you're explaining. However, I think there's going to be a lot of people that are displaced because a couple of programmers go, it would be cool. Let's take these 3 different AIs and just cobble them together and see what comes out, right? Like, I think that's going to happen.
But I think my point was, I think it frees that person up to then do something which is, I will say, like personal translation. I don't know. Like, I think it just creates new opportunities because, yeah, sure, it lowers the rate, but it also now, because the rate has dropped, now all of a sudden, like, I'm using ChatGPT descriptions in my YouTube video. Never would have done that before because the barrier of entry was way too high. Loops.
All right. I'm going to drop a bomb on you guys. So first of all, let me step back and say, I think anybody in the positions that you're talking about, anybody who's in that position where you're like, that job is going to get taken over by an AI, those people are always going to be like, no, because here's why. And I think, definitely, software, that's one of them. Cyber, that's one of them. We're always going to be like, oh, there's always got to be that human touch, right? I think there's no better example of that than translators. So first of all, translator, different from like interpreter, there's like different roles that you can work in that do different things. And, I've spoken through a translator many times, trying to interact with cultures that are very different from my own. And I cannot tell you how many times, like, these guys saved my lives, literally, in some cases. They do so much more that adds the human context to that situation where an AI would not be able to do this, I think, in its current format, because it does not know my culture, my background, my experiences. It does not know those of the people that I'm talking to. But who does? That interpreter, the person who grew up in that culture, who understands the nuances of, say, a young dude from America talking to an old guy from somewhere else. I can't say certain things to those people without really offending them. The interpreter knows that. They can't say certain things to me without really offending me, and the interpreter knows that. How can an AI learn that? How can an AI capture all of that context quickly enough and succinctly enough to do that job? So let me back up and say, translator, trying to, getting really technical, like transliterating, that's going to be an open and closed deal. Interpreting, probably not. I think that's going to be, that's pretty far out. So, what jobs would you come for? Like, now I'm going to go offend some other jobs, right? So, copywriters, people who are like writing copy for ads, I think they're done.
Yeah.
People who are writing speeches, you're done. Like, just forget about it. Social media personalities who are like, like I said, I pump garbage out through my LinkedIn sock puppets now. Whoever's doing that, like social media engagement, their jobs they're going to get a lot easier. I'll say that. Whoever's doing that job is probably using ChatGPT on a daily basis now. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'll step back to say, like, it's so easy for anyone in one job to look over and say, like, that job is gone, but I'm probably wrong about copywriter. I'm probably wrong about speechwriter. I hope we're kind of all wrong to some degree that, ChatGPT is not going to take over anything entirely, but it will make a lot of things easier.
Yeah. I mean, this is why I keep saying, like, I think there's going to be classes of jobs like transliterators. That's what I meant. Like taking copy of text and turning it into a reasonable translation. Yeah. There's no reason to pay someone $100 an hour to do that anymore if ChatGPT can do it in a reasonable time frame. And you can just say, can you try again on this sentence? And interpreter's totally different. That's a totally different realm, right? So like I will say that.
Only to say, like, there's always going to be that human element.
Yeah. So and I'll finish on this. This is why I think it is better to think of ChatGPT as a cognitive assistance device than anything else. And I'm going to keep saying that because I think if you think about it that way, instead of being afraid of it or whatever, if you think about it in terms of, I can get this thing to teach me faster than any random human for any random thing I want to ask it. And, you take reasonable skepticism with its answers. I'll say that, always be skeptical about it. But if you look at it that way, oh my gosh, just the past 2 weeks, it has made my job so much easier. I've gotten so much done just for little tutorials of stuff. Like, how do I use this thing that I've never used before? Cool. 5 minutes later, I have a good idea of how to do this thing.
Something I've noticed with it is it's on the level of something just like, I want to say it again. It is a hacker's wet dream. It really is. Because, oh my gosh, you can take any piece you're curious about and you can spend hours digging down the rabbit hole of it. Like any topic. I'm going to go coffee. I want to talk about the production of it. And it is. And then you read that paragraph and you find something interested in you and dive deeper into that. Like, Google doesn't really allow that because you're going to have to context switch between I'm searching this, I found a piece of art, I found this article. Okay, now I found that interesting. I have to go back to the search console. I need to retype that, and then it's not writing it. I legitimately can research coffee and say, but explain it to me in the voice of Christopher Walken. Like, and have it do that. And then I can look at the nuance of that, and you can train it on these different things. But if you find this communicator, like, great, I can have it explain it in that way, explain to my 5, and I don't have to find I can take that complex thing, and it can be my rubber ducky. Like the rubber ducky, for anyone who hasn't heard of it, is if you're writing a piece of code, and you want to like really make sure it's running correctly, you take a rubber ducky and you explain it line by line to the rubber ducky. And at one point you're going to come across this piece, which is like, oh, and it should do this. And you kind of look at it weird and go, oh wait, no, it actually doesn't do that. And there's no judgment from the rubber duck. It doesn't care. It loves you. And with ChatGPT,
where do you get your rubber duckies? Because mine judge me all day.
But you can go down these pathways with ChatGPT and ask it the stupid question. And that's how we get better, is we ask it continually the stupid question. And I can just dump a piece of code in it and be like, I don't know what this error message is. Point me in the right direction. And then that might lead you to different sites. Imagine ChatGPT with the knowledge that Google has, and it will lead you to those resources. That is exciting. Where I can go, give me the kernel information on this specific thing, and it points me in that direction. That gets me excited. I don't know about you.
So
I was really hoping that, I was going to try to throw something really hard at ChatGPT and see if it could come back with something that would surprise me. And so I was working with it the other day. Actually, one of my coworkers was saying the same thing that you're saying. He was using it as a rubber ducky and having really good experience with it. I was like, oh, cool. You can throw out something with buggy code and it'll like find the bug and help you, figure it out. But I was like, okay, well, like, how about we try to get it to write some like optimized code? So I was like throwing some NP complete problems at it. I was like, write me an algorithm to solve the weighted knapsack problem efficiently. And it threw some code at me, and it was, as expected, it was not efficient. It was, expectedly inefficient, and it had some bugs in it. And so, it was funny because I went back and forth with it, and I was like, hey, there's some bugs in your code. And it like reviewed it, and it was like, oh yeah, here's your problem. And it was like telling me that it was my code already. I was like, all right, whatever, you wrote the code, ChatGPT. And so it fixes it, and it's like, here's your problem. Here, I fixed it for you. And I'm like, hey, there's still a bug. It won't run. And they're like, oh, here's your problem again. I fixed it for you. And so it learned, and it was a good rubber ducky.
It has been really weird. I've had that happen too, where it's been like, I asked it like one of the first questions. I was demonstrating it for my wife because, again, obviously she cares about ChatGPT as much as I do. But I was like, I give an example. I go, what day of the month was, it was just my daughter's birthday. What day of the month was she born on? And it's like Tuesday. She looks at me and she's like, wasn't it Tuesday? I'm like, oh, ChatGPT, I think you're wrong on that. And it came back and it's like, you're right. It should be Thursday. And it was like, this seems like a straightforward, like on May 4th of this year, that like it should easily be able to do that. How it gets that wrong. And that's a little terrifying because if you trust it, even for the simplest things, it can very easily be wrong. Gary, I cut you off.
No, I don't remember what I was going to say. Oh, no. So this is why I said, if you trust, you got to look at any answer that ChatGPT gives you with a decent amount of skepticism. And that's why I think direct integration into search engines and things like that is going to be questionable in the near future, especially depending on what they trained it on or with in terms of a lot of stuff. So let's take code, for example. It went out and it read books and books and books and books and books upon books of like theoretical computer science in order to be able to answer that NP complete problem issue, right? Yeah. And then it also read, probably a huge portion of Stack Overflow, right? And we know how reliable Stack Overflow is. It's usually like this is how the average Stack Overflow thing that you look up actually says. It goes, I implemented a solution for this, but it doesn't work. Can you please help me understand why? And then there will be the first comment will be, here's why it doesn't work. And then the second comment will be, the first answer's BS. Here's actually why. And it's usually the second comment that's actually correct, right?
Wait,
And
no.
When
you missed a step there. What it actually is here's the problem I'm having. That's wrong. Here's why. Here's a solution. That solution's BS. And then the original poster coming back like, don't worry, guys, I figured it out.
Yeah. And so
with nothing afterwards.
And so you got to realize where this thing learned from, and it learned from humans. And on average, it's probably better than the average human if you ask it for solutions. But you have to recognize the average human is also wrong most of the time. Right? So like you have to use this thing not to replace your brain, but to assist your brain. And you got to look at anything it tells you with the same skepticism that you would look at with the Office know-it-all, right? Where you're just like, that guy knows a lot, but does he really know the answer to that question I just had? Or was he just pulling it out of his butt?
Do you think ChatGPT is trying to emulate the Office know-it-all now? Like maybe that's why, they thought your kid was born on Tuesday and not Thursday. And, maybe that's why,
I want a little earpiece that takes audio input so that anytime I get questions from people, it just pumps it into ChatGPT, and in the other ear, I get the answer to the question, so I can become the ultimate Office know-it-all.
The thing which excites me with it is there's a great application on the iPhone called Carrot Weather, and you can set its political alignment and you can move it to like homicidal or snarky. And I can't wait till you can add a personality into ChatGPT. I did like a Twitter post on this where it was like, I asked it a question, can you give me hello world? It's like, really, you should RTFM instead of actually asking me such a simple question. And I want to add personality into ChatGPT and just like turn up the snarkiness if you ask it too many dumb questions or something like that.
Reminds me of Interstellar's AI. The robot, he's like, really snarky at first, and dude's like, hey, how about dial your humor down to like 80%? It's giving him a hard time for asking the question.
I have ChatGPT up, and I just ask it, can you be snarky for the rest of this conversation? And it says, as an AI language model, I do not have emotions, but I can respond in a tone that could be perceived as snarky if that's what you're looking for. Just keep in mind that my responses are still generated based on the information I was trained on, so they may not always align with your desired tone or level of sarcasm.
What's so weird to me, so there's certain things I feel it does really well, but my goodness, humor, it completely, like, I think for creative thinking, like, it can infer, it's just like the fundamental problem. It can infer what a table is by the look of it, by other people calling it a table, by all the definitions. It cannot infer it is a table by stuff being on top of it, or anything a human can typically do. So it thinks something is funny because it sees the responses to it as ha 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 ha, or whatnot. And when it combines them, it does some really goofy things. Like, ask it a question. Like, if you want a demonstration of this, ask it a question and give it the punchline. My daughter had this, I don't know where she got it from, but she thought the funniest punchline was because him didn't have a towel. And she'd say whatever. I don't know, like, why did the chicken cross the road? Because him didn't have a towel. And she just bust out laughing. So I went to ChatGPT and I asked it the question, give me an actual joke which punchline is because him didn't have a towel, and it failed miserably. And I think like things like rhyming, it did really well. Like me and Gowrie went back and forth on doing like, give me 'Twas a Night Before Christmas where Santa is a homicidal maniac, or where Santa is a hacker who's trying to like break into the naughty list or whatever it is. And there was some really great ones it came from. But the moment you're like, and make it funny, it has zero concept of what's funny.
So I'll share this with you. I just asked it to respond in a snarky tone, and then I asked it, "Do you know what a table is?" And then it just responded to me flat out what a table was, like explained. And then I asked it, "Why weren't you snarky with that response?" And it goes, "My apologies. I could definitely respond in a more snarky tone. A table is just a fancy piece of furniture that people use to prop up their elbows while they eat, work, or play board games. It's not like it's rocket science." Like it definitely like it understands tone and things like that, but it struggles. It definitely struggles in that sense for definitely being funny.
So let's flip this on back. Let's flip it back to our industry. Is the AI coming for our jobs? What parts of it are you actually excited about? Like, how do you fundamentally think this is going to change the way we do things in the future? Like, what projects are you even thinking about that this thing will be leveraged for, where you're like, I can't wait till someone does XYZ with it?
I mean, I think we're already seeing it in like customer service applications. So like I'm working for a software as a service provider right now, and I'm sure as a bunch of customers come online, you're going to start to see people coming in and asking really common questions. And, that's not scalable, if you have lots of customers who want like the human response. Now, for the AI response, might be really easy, might be enough for them, right? I would love to have a customer service agent for this application. And I think that the customers would probably be fine with it too, to be honest with you. And I think it's a ripe area.
And I think it has all the knowledge it needs from all the entire knowledge base. It kind of goes back to us writing good documentation throughout.
Yeah,
So
right.
we talked about something last week where you were talking about like all of our hobbies and such, and I was saying like I need to cut out hobbies, and I also need to figure out like, it'd be really nice. I'm like coming up with a new hobby during the stream where I was just like, I should make an application that I can use that will create a schedule for me to do like house maintenance, like replace air filters, things like that. And it'll just pop up and say like, here's your red light tasks for this week that need to get done because they're already past due. But every house is going to be slightly different. Everyone's life is going to be slightly different. So you can't just have this cookie cutter solution. You need something. I think that is a perfect example of like, hey, manage my life in these menial task type things. And the best concrete example I can use for this is scheduling, just in general. So a manager utilizing or someone utilizing this to implement a schedule for people where there is a human factor of someone's going to drop out of the schedule, then we're going to have a blank spot for treatments and like medical schedules, right? You want to try and keep your schedule full as much as possible so you can make as much money as possible, but you want to balance bringing new evaluations in against follow-ups. And right now that's a human endeavor where like someone drops off the day before, you got to go through your waiting list, and then you have to try and kind of know what the next couple months look like to decide whether you should fill that spot with an evaluation or with a follow-up appointment, so you don't basically get too many evaluations in and then you back people up and they can't get in because you've had too many new patients. So like this is a super hyper specific problem, right? But a perfect example of this is scheduling, where an AI can just know the next year's worth of events, and you can just say, hey, schedule me this medical appointment, and it'll go off and find a slot for you that works because it knows your entire schedule as long as you keep pumping in all those things. And on the backside for the providers, it ends up being a more balanced system where you get more access, the providers aren't overloaded, and things like that. So that type of menial task, I think, can just be done away with, which I think is a cool thing.
So I want to come back to it in a minute. Before I forget, it was Microsoft's Teams integration, because they're doing some of that. But as you were talking, I was thinking from a managerial maybe position, oh gosh, you would need such an invasion of your employees. But imagine that you could like AI go watch my employees effectively. So like, let's say you're talking about coding and things like that. there's certain days and certain times where you are going to write, we can't go off lines of code or things like that, but effectively, like, you are at peak performance between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays for coding. So I'm going to schedule your meetings on Monday afternoon and Friday morning, and then Wednesday I'm going to block out for this. Imagine if it could get that creative and that smart, even if not even from a manager's perspective, but that smart of saying, you do the best coding on these days, or you do the most actual active work on these days, so I'm going to fill the meetings on these days and balance it out. I think with Teams, there in Microsoft's integration with that is things like automated meeting notes to bullet point them out, and then to capture action items and assign those to specific people. That is really cool because, like, for instance, we have an amazing project manager, which we pulled on, and she's freaking phenomenal. And even as great as she is, like, she can't be on every meeting. Like, there's tons of meetings I have with my team where it's like, it's just a waste of her time to be on them. But if it's like a 5-minute meeting that we can pull some action items and have that thing capture them and assign them, oh, that's a whole nother level.
And now your PM's fired. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No, gosh, there's like, okay. We use the analogy, like, there's so many, like, oh gosh, I love our company, but we always laugh. We're like, it has been 0 days since our last HR violation. But like, and she's good with it and everything like that. But at one point, someone said, she's our microwave. And you realize it more and more, like, at least it sounds terrible, but you think about it and you're like, no, if you don't have a microwave and you never use a microwave in your house, you're like, it's fine, I don't need a microwave. Then you buy a microwave and you cannot live without it because now you can get popcorn on demand. You can heat up the soup without having to start the stove. And all of a sudden you're like, how can I live without a microwave? So like, oh gosh, no, she is our microwave and I appreciate her very much. It has been 0 days.
I think a lot of I joked originally, I was like, the sound of everyone freaking out because ChatGPT is coming for their jobs. It's just the sound of every middle manager screaming at the top of their lungs because they know that their job's on the chopping block.
Oh yeah.
Right. Well, but the thing is that the smart ones will look at it and go, how can I use this to become a much more effective manager? And everything we're talking about that is exactly the point. I think it will chop out a lot of those people that just shuffle data from one person to another and really enable some of these people. Like the Teams integration is really cool. The only problem is, and this is the problem that I see with having an AI manager, if you will, in this sense. So much stuff happens in a dynamic environment. And the example would be, as an engineer, I'm a little lucky. I get to sit in a bunch of senior meetings or like customer meetings that typically I wouldn't be in. And I can sit there and stew on what customers or what senior people at the company what they're actually interested in, and kind of derive unspoken thoughts about where they think the market is going and all of these things. And I can tweak the way I write software or the way I plan to do the development in a way that suits the business the best in that sense. And an AI is not going to be able to do that. It's just going to take, here's our action items that we talked about from the meeting, and my action items that I took away might be slightly different than the smoke and action items in the meeting itself. And it's not going to have the context of the creative portion of the job. So I don't know, like, just handing off all of the managerial pieces of this is really going to work, because there's still like an art to leading humans, if you will.
I would simply say it frees you up, though. Like during those conversations, if you're responsible for taking notes and doing that, you're going to just kind of be okay at both.
Oh yeah.
If you can have it take the notes so you can focus on those things which are really only you can do, that's where I think this is awesome, because it frees you up. Someone in chat, this was like one of those things, I haven't been watching chat nearly as much as I wish I would have. But this is an incredible comment. Personally, I'm waiting for ChatGPT to index all of the standards, ISO NIST and start proposing changes considering using
I
AI
love it.
integration. I'll bring this one step farther, and someone's going to do this, and someone's going to make a boatload of money on it. ISO, NIST, high trust, HIPAA, PCI. There is so many compliances and standards out there. And all of them, ideally, depending on what it is, like ISO is great. ISO is very well-rounded. It's fantastic. It's weak in some areas. NIST, blah, blah, blah. But here's the thing is, one of the things that we've had to do internally, and there's software built for this, but it's so stupidly expensive we don't use it, is there's certain controls in NIST that overline with ISO, which also overline with high trust. But they're maybe a little bit different. And I'm excited for them, load them all up, find where they all overlap, and what is the most effective and efficient way for me to satiate all of them in the most concise and easy way, and then have that drive policy. All right, go on. What are you going to say?
We're all thinking of the XKCD comic right now. There are 14 standards on how to do this thing. I am going to propose an AI generated standard that handles all of them. There are now 15 standards that implement this thing.
I'm not saying about creating a new standard. That's not what I'm saying. I'm strictly saying there's overlap between them. So what are those overlap pieces? And then I can satiate that.
Right. It's basically saying, hey AI, take these 14 standards and produce a standard that satisfies all the standards. Like,
but I'm not looking. No, it's not, because I'm not looking to satiate. I'm not looking to satiate a new standard. I need to satiate NIST and ISO, and I don't want to have two policy sets, one for NIST, one for ISO. I want one that satiates both of them.
You just described a standard. Like
it's not a standard though.
Everyone's going to get rid of their own standard. Like, NIST is a national standard. ISO is an international standard. Guess what? Every other country has its own national standard. They also have overlaps with ISO and NIST. And to Gore's point, you're not gonna create a new standard without and get rid of the other standard. You're just going to create a new standard.
No. I'm saying here. There's example. There is a maintenance requirement for patching and updating. It's in SOC 2, it's in NIST, it's in ISO. If I satiate this and I do a patch management policy, what control am I satiating for this one, and this one?
Gotcha. Yeah.
I'm not saying I want to create a new standard. I'm saying if I do this, what controls from all of these freaking standards am I adhering to?
I get it. But what I'm saying is that artistically, logically, however you want to put it, there is no difference between what you are describing and, hey AI, generate me the standard that I am satiating with this, right? Like, you are generating a combined standard of all standards and asking it,
I'm not.
Look, you absolutely are.
No, I'm not. Because
we're just being pedantic. We're just being pedantic.
You can be pedantic if you want. I'm saying is in an audit, I'm giving saying, like, I am currently ISO compliant. Am I also NIST compliant? That's what I'm asking.
And the obvious way to use that is, how do I go from being whatever I'm compliant now to being compliant in this other thing? And the thing it spits out is functionally a new standard. That's what I am saying. Right? Like, the thing that it tells you how to implement these things. That's all I'm saying, is like, there is logically no difference between these things. It's also a really smart thing to do. So you should go do it.
In the funniest part, it has been done. But these companies go, this is the one which drives me nuts, is the companies which do it now go, well, we have a platform to do this thing, and it's like $15,000 a month. And it's like, nope, I would just rather not care. And that's the thing, is there's no way to unify all these standards. That is a new standard.
Now that we have sufficiently put the audience to sleep, what should we move on?
Let's talk about compliance a little bit more.
Yeah.
Talk about password compliance.
Spicy topic. We've gotten more viewers.
I know. Though I got one for you, which is, do you think this is going to change the attack landscape or not? Like, what about for bug bounties and things like that? How does this impact it? Am I going to start using this for code reviews?
Could you get, yeah, I mean, sure, why not? But could you get could you write a fuzzer for an arbitrary protocol or application using ChatGPT? Probably, right? Like it would take the onboarding task to looking like investigating a new piece of software, a new protocol. I think it would put it on Rails. And I think, yeah, you'll probably see some like less, skilled people entering the bug bounty game. And I invite it. Like, I think it's a great thing.
Oh, go on.
So on one hand, I think it has the potential to significantly improve cybersecurity by enabling like more sophisticated and effective threat detection and response capabilities. But, for example, it could analyze a vast amount of data and identify patterns that may indicate a potential attack, right? And it can do that better than a human. And it can respond to them more quickly and accurately than a human security analyst could. And what I just said to you was generated by ChatGPT.
It's
so on the other hand, AI and machine learning algorithm. I'm not going to do it again. Like I'm still just reading off of a prompter.
The thing which I think excites me with it, and I think is going to change the entire landscape, is so there's this pendulum swing that always happens with anything. Whether it's hardware, whether it's like badges and stuff like that, there's this pendulum shift that happens. New technology comes out and it's so stupidly expensive no one can afford it. 3D printers. I don't have a 3D printer, but the example is when those things first came out, it was like $50,000 for your first one. And now you can build yourself one out of Legos. And I think when AI first came out, it was like, it's now $15,000 a month to train it on a language model off of your own voice, which is really weird how that one's still so expensive. I don't know why, but you have this giant cost. Now it's shifted to pennies on the dollar where I'm using it to create decent summaries of my website. I also appreciate that Braden's like, yep, I just read your TLDRs. I don't actually read the article, which is good. You enjoy the AI. But it's now so cheap. It's so just dirt cheap that it's driving innovation. We are having this massive burst of innovation for just all sorts of, and I'm going to say it this way but I don't mean it this way, which is for the most utterly ridiculous, stupid ways to use AI. And I use the example of like, if we wanted to communicate emotion over text before, what's the dumbest way we could do it? I don't know. Let's send a colon, a dash, and a smiley face and make that communicate emotion. We are coming up with the most utterly ridiculous ways to use AI, and I freaking love it because it costs pennies on the dollar to develop now.
So that I'll kind of leave with this, right? Like, so the other portion that the ChatGPT responded with was basically that, while it can improve cybersecurity and stuff in that realm, it can also hurt because like the bad guys can use it too, right? So they can, use it to power their attacks and make it actually evasive and look like human activity and things like that, all that stuff. And so it kind of said like it will basically enhance and compromise cybersecurity. And I'm going to leave it with this. It's basically the same thing with like nuclear energy. Richard Feynman said this in context of nuclear energy. To every man is given the keys to the gates of heaven. The same key opens the gates of hell. And so it is with science. And I think we're about to discover how AI fits into that picture for the exact reason that Silk said. We're going to use it in really stupid ways, and in some cases it's going to help a lot, in other cases it's going to hurt a whole lot.
Yeah, it's interesting because you just opened up the living off the land attacks, which are like how I use. It baffles me that you use excel.exe to download files, not with a macro, but by just like going to a terminal, typing excel.exe, and then your web request, and it just downloads it. Like living off the land requests and having it simulate a real human, that will radically change some of the attack landscape. Have either of you hit the dreaded terms and conditions with ChatGPT where it says, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do this because you're violating our terms and conditions?
No.
You haven't? Gower, you're
Yeah,
muted.
sorry. I've definitely asked it to be like, hey, could you like I'll word something in natural language, and then it'll come back and say that, and I'll be like, what did I? Oh, I didn't mean it that way, so I have to like change change the way I worded it. So I've come to learn that I'm a relatively vulgar person.
Oh my goodness. What are your final thoughts on this? I'll hand it to Loops first.
Oh man. Well, I can't top Feynman, so I don't even know what you want from me at this point. Yeah, no, final thoughts. It's not coming for your jobs, but it's coming for your side jobs maybe. And yeah, I think that's a good thing. I think, the support tasks, I think it's the work, the crap that you don't want to do, you can now hand it off, and you don't have to do it. And yeah, I love it. I'm looking forward to it. And even if it makes, talking about, it's going to make a better attacker. Cool. I think we need that. I don't think that's something to be feared. I think that's something to be expected in cyber. And that's the reason that you're going to still need the human on the defense side too.
Gauri?
Yeah, my words for the viewers are, if you look at this thing as a cognitive assistance device, you're going to have a good time with it.
Yeah, I think when I'm looking at this tool, there's very few points I see in our lives where we go, oh my gosh, this is radically going to change how we interact with the internet and technology. And there's been bursts throughout, but this one, I don't know why. These things I feel are getting quicker and quicker to start popping. This is the first one which kind of gave me a little bit of chills, thinking there is going to be so many cool innovations. Whether it's helping me pick music, whether it's scheduling, whether it's just shoving off the stuff that I don't want to do off to something else, like creating titles and creating descriptions for videos like this. I am pumped for the future. I am so excited. I hope you are too. And as always, hack on.